What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I try and help you guys keep on top of the macro developments coming out of China. For those of you watching for the first time, I work in China in an executive role, and a big part of my job requires that I follow those macro developments. So if that is something you're interested in, and if you want to be just as informed as my clients, maybe consider subscribing. Everyone else, happy Year of the Ox, happy Chinese or Lunar New Year. As I'm filming this, it's the first day of the new Lunar New Year, the Year of the Ox. Hopefully it's a bullish year for everyone, whether in the markets or wherever else. This video is not as exhaustive as I would want. There are about 12 stories that I wanted to cover, but I simply don't have enough time to put together enough research and to upload this before I fly out. So hopefully this will do. I'm touching on several important developments, but not everything that I wanted to touch on. But of course, if you enjoyed the episode, it's a massive help if you smash that like button, especially since this is a new channel that's touching on relatively sensitive material, even for YouTube. And also just take this opportunity to thank my patrons, Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for all the support. It's very humbling to have it. Okay, with all that said, let's jump into this week's China Update. On Monday, the Household Administration Research Center of the Ministry of Public Security released the 2020 National Name Report. In a stunning finding, the report found that there were a total of 10.04 million babies registered with the government in 2020, a 14.8% drop over 2019. Now, registration numbers are normally lower than official birth numbers. In 2019, for example, there were 11.79 million babies registered and 14.65 million children born. We won't know the full numbers, the birth numbers, until the National Bureau of Statistics releases those numbers in April. Some media reports have confused these two and erroneously reported that there has been a drop of 30%. However, predictions suggest that it's going to be a reduction of 15%, something closer to 15%. But still, a 15% drop in births is a massive, massive drop in births for the PRC. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the number of births in 2016 was 17.86 million, 17.23 million in 2017, 15.23 million in 2018, and in 2019, like I just said, the number was 14.65 million. See the trend? I think at this point, every man and his dog knows that China is facing a tremendous demographic challenge over the medium to long term, which will present serious social and economic policy issues for the government. It does seem, however, that the speed of this decline is still jarring for many, particularly in policy circles in Beijing. Quote, "We've known for some time that there would be a decline, but such a big drop was beyond our expectations," end quote. And quote, "China has fallen into a low fertility trap. Although the number of births in 2020 was the lowest in recent decades, it seems likely to be the highest figure for the next few decades," end quote. Last month, the China Population and Development Research Center, a state-affiliated think tank in Beijing, said that beginning in 2021, this year, the PRC will enter a period of quote-unquote negative population growth, 5 years earlier than anticipated. And of course, the gender imbalance continues, with an extra 500,000 more boys being born this year than girls. Recently, the Ministry of Civil Affairs projected that by the end of 2021, the number of single men in China living alone will reach 92 million. And if you include the government's estimate of all single men generally in the mainland, the number is larger than the entire population of Russia. The PRC's top diplomat, Yang Jiechi, and US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken had a long phone call over the weekend. The readouts from both sides were quite different in tone, but the conversations seemed to have been constructive, albeit probably quite tense. Let's compare the tone of the two statements. Quote, "The Taiwan question, the most important and sensitive core issue in China-US relations, bears on China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The United States should strictly abide by the One China principle and the 3 Sino-US joint communiques," adding that Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and Tibet-related affairs are all China's internal affairs and allow no interference by any external forces, end quote. And the US statement, quote, Secretary Blinken stressed the United States will continue to stand up for human rights and democratic values, including in Xinjiang, Tibet, and Hong Kong, and pressed China to join the international community in condemning the military coup in Burma. The Secretary reaffirmed that the United States will work together with its allies and partners in defense of our shared values and interests to hold the PRC accountable for its efforts to threaten stability in the Indo-Pacific, including across the Taiwan Strait, and its undermining of the rules-based international system. End quote. This conversation led the way for Biden and Xi to have their first phone call, which happened a few days later. The White House published a very short readout on the conversation, which too was likely quite tense. Quote, President Biden underscored his fundamental concern about Beijing's coercive and unfair economic practices, crackdown in Hong Kong, human rights abuses in Xinjiang, and increasingly assertive actions in the region, including towards Taiwan. The two leaders also exchanged views on countering the COVID pandemic and shared challenges of global health, security, climate change, and preventing weapons proliferation. President Biden committed to pursuing practical, results-oriented engagements when it advances the interests of the American people and those of our allies. End quote. Okay, next up is the quote of the week, and I wanted the quote of the week to be two quotes this week, and to be a state and a state media response to China shutting down this popular app Clubroom this week, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about already. I think these quotes are quite telling and self-explanatory, so this is why I've included them in the quote of the week this week. Quote, US social audio app Clubhouse has suddenly been chased after by some Chinese people. It must be admitted that a small number of Chinese have extremely high requirements for freedom of speech, but their desires cannot be satisfied in reality. In China, arrangements surrounding free speech must be compatible with China's governance system. The free speech cannot impact or jeopardize the country's governance. This is the bottom line. People need to have a basic knowledge and understanding of this fact. And the second quote, quote, Reuters, a US audio app appeared to be blocked in China's mainland. Do you have any information on that? Wang Wenbin, I'm not aware of what you're talking about. I'd like to stress our principle that China's internet is open, and the Chinese government manages internet-related affairs according to law and regulations. China is firmly determined in safeguarding national sovereignty, security, and development interests, and rejecting foreign interference. End quote. I've left links to both of these quotes in the description below. Next up, anti-monopoly guidelines. This sounds very boring, but it is quite consequential and is probably going to have a tremendous effect on China's massive technology companies. On Sunday, the State Council's Anti-Monopoly Committee published a document outlining new anti-monopoly guidelines. Though the document referred generally to platform operators without giving specific names, most believe Beijing is targeting the massive tech giants like Alibaba and Tencent. The final document defines the nature of platforms, platform operators, and the platform economy. It provides specifics on 4 types of antitrust activities, including monopoly agreements, abuse of a dominant market position, concentration of operators, and abuse of administrative power to exclude or restrict competition. Now, these guidelines are very similar to principles that were already contained in the current antitrust law, but seem to give regulators more power to enforce these rules and the political space to go after big and well-connected technology companies that have historically had too much political protection. So expect the pressure to continue on the likes of Alibaba and its ilk. On Monday, the central bank, the People's Bank of China, released its, quote, report on implementation of China's monetary policy in the fourth quarter of 2020. Once again, we can see this policy debate regarding debt versus growth being debated in public, mainly between the central bank / central government financial technocrats on the one hand and provincial leadership / SOEs on the other. In this report, the central bank is very concerned about household / consumer debt, calling for measures to reduce consumer financing, aka household debt. Quote, to speed up the construction of a new development pattern, we should pay attention to demand-side management, adhere to the strategic basis of expanding domestic demand, and stimulate domestic consumption potential. But it is not appropriate to expand consumption by developing consumer finance. Went on to say, there is little room for further expansion of household debt. End Quote, of course, household debt is just one part of the wider system matrix of debt within the wider economy. If growth targets are artificially set at levels above the normal growth rate, then restricting household credit will necessarily increase corporate, read SOE, or government credit, or some mix of both. Thus, debt will increase overall within the system. In fact, it was regulators' attempts to stamp out excessive corporate credit from around 2015, which resulted in an explosion of household credit, which is problematic today. Okay guys, that was short and sweet. I'm sorry that it is a fast episode, but I wanted to make sure that the research that was being presented here was well researched, the information was well researched, and that I had enough time to film this and put it up before I head to the airport. Hope you guys are doing well. Wherever you are, stay safe, stay sane. Happy Year of the Ox, Happy Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, whatever you like to call it. I will see you guys next time on China Update.